Thank you. Good morning. My name is Representative Matt Simpson, and I want to thank you all for being here today. It is unfortunate that we are here to discuss the rape of children and the penalties for the rape of children. I wish nothing more than there not to be rapes of children under the age of 12, and we wouldn't have this discussion. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. Because we live in that world, we must have punishments for people that commit this offense. In my opinion, this is the worst of offenses. Taking advantage and taking the innocence of children under the age of 12 is one of the worst things, if not the worst, someone can do. Because it is one of the worst offenses, it deserves the worst of the worst punishments. That's why we're here today, to let you know we will be refiling a bill to allow for the punishment of capital punishment for those that commit the offense of rape or sodomy of a child under the age of 12. I'm very honored to be here today with Senator April Weaver, who has taken this mantle on in the Senate. I'll let her talk about what she's got and her reasons behind it, but I feel confident that the time is now for Alabama to act. In 2023, Florida passed similar legislation. In 2024, Tennessee did the same. Already in 2025, Idaho, Oklahoma, and Arkansas have passed similar legislation. Alabama needs to be on this list. I was very honored to be in the White House on Tuesday, and this topic was discussed in the White House. They talked about this being part of the America First agenda to pursue the death penalty for child rapists. And that's what the state of Alabama is going to do. So Senator Weaver, Attorney General Marshall, Hoss Mack with the Sheriff's Association, Vocal is here for the victims of crime and leniency, to be the voice for the victims through here. This is a push that it's going to take a lot of people to get involved to get this across the finish line. And I'm happy to be a part of the team. The next person I want to introduce is our Senator April Weaver, to talk about her involvement.
Thank you. Like Matt, I just want to thank you all for being here today to discuss this very terrible topic that we're sad we have to be here discussing today. You know, when a horrific child sex trafficking ring is reported in the news, most people assume that it couldn't happen in their backyard, but as someone who has deep roots in Bibb County and someone who represents Bibb County in the Alabama Senate, I just want you to know that these events have hit really, really close to home. I believe that there is a special place in hell for child sex predators, and when we pass this bill and when it is approved by the courts, there is also going to be a special place in Alabama for child sex predators, and that is on death row in Holman Prison. I defy anyone, anywhere, with any conscience or any sense of morals to look at this case and others like it and argue that the death penalty is not appropriate. Stealing the innocence of a child, destroying their future before they have a chance to live it, and subjecting them to the kind of pain and torture that few among us can even comprehend should put you in the express line to the death chamber and get you fitted for a nitrogen hypoxia gas mask before the judge is finished banging their gavel. I've asked Pro Tem Gudger to prioritize this bill when the Alabama Senate goes back in regular session. I know that Representative Simpson has also had those conversations with leadership in the House. I feel very confident that we will be moving these bills very quickly, and we will be protecting the children of Alabama quickly. The death penalty is meant to be a deterrent, and if passing this bill keeps one innocent child from suffering, it will have done its job. And if it sends even one child predator to an early grave, well, that works too. At this point, I would like to introduce Sheriff Jodie Wade from Bibb County, who will be giving remarks next.
As my Chief Investigator, Chris Poole, has said in the past, this is one of the most horrific cases of child sexual abuse that any of us can remember in our combined careers. It's not unique to Bibb County. This type of thing goes on in a lot of other places, and there's a lot of law enforcement officers that work cases sometimes just as horrific as this. So as we come here today, I've been briefed on the bill. I hadn't had time to look through all of it, but when you somewhat top line it, the death penalty for pedophiles, I'm in. As we work to give a voice to these victims that haven't been able to have their say as of yet, we just want to take time out to come here and voice our support for this legislation. And I would appreciate everybody out there's support and the hard work they're doing. And I thank our legislators and April Weaver for everything they're doing. Matt Simpson, everything he's doing. Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Sheriff. Just a quick word of thanks to begin with, and that is first, Sheriff, to you and your team. I mean, this, horrific, I don't think does justice as a word for what we have at least initially learned has taken place in Bibb County. And for Sheriff and his team, one of my personal law enforcement heroes, Chris Poole, leading this particular charge to complete this investigation is a difficult lift, not only because of the complicated nature of these cases, but I hope that you can also realize the impact that these cases have on law enforcement and prosecutors. These are tough, but these men and women have dedicated their lives to providing accountability for those who have been harmed. And I can tell you that, Sheriff, I know you have not wasted any resource or effort in trying to bring resolution and accountability for what's taking place there. Eventually, that's going to take place in a Bibb County courtroom. And we look forward to a jury having an opportunity to adjudicate all those who are eventually charged in this case with the consequence of their crimes. I also want to thank Matt Simpson for stepping out last year and raising this question again in Alabama. And let's acknowledge this up front. This is not the first time that Alabama has considered the question of capital punishment for these types of cases. In fact, that at one point in time was the law. We know the Supreme Court acted back in 2008 to invalidate the efforts of states to be able to engage in capital punishment for a case in which there was no death. But there's a time to reevaluate the analysis that the Supreme Court used, as well as the importance that states have placed upon this issue moving forward. Senator Weaver, thank you as well for your support of what the Alabama legislature will have an opportunity to be able to do. Let's be clear that if in fact this is passed, there will be work done legally to be able to allow this to be enforceable. I can tell you that if it occurs during my tenure as Attorney General, we will make sure that we are defending this law as we've done many others that the legislature has passed, to be able to send a clear message about not only the intent of the legislature in protecting kids, but the public policy in our state is how we hold those who hurt our children accountable. If in fact another state comes before us, we'll use the resources of our office to be able to support that state in being able to do the same thing as Representative Simpson has described for you in Florida and Idaho, and I guess now 3 other states in addition to that who have likewise adopted this as their public policy. I can also tell you that I cannot imagine the next Attorney General of Alabama wouldn't likewise be similarly positioned to make sure that we are defending the will of the legislature and holding these offenders accountable. Representative Simpson said it well. We hope that nobody is subject to this penalty because that means that no one will have hurt a child in this way. Sadly, there are those that have chosen to do this in the past. We have to anticipate that this may occur in the future. And if it does, not only do we wish, as Senator Weaver said, that the capital punishment becomes a deterrent, it's also an effective statement of accountability and where we stand in our state, how we value our children, and the lengths of which we will go to find those accountable who choose to harm them. So this effort has my full support. I imagine that you'll have significant support for what both Representative Simpson and Senator Weaver are attempting to do. And I look forward to very early on Governor Ivey having an opportunity to be able to sign this bill into law.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. how do y'all know at this point whether the U.S. Supreme Court will reconsider?
What will have to happen is someone will have to be charged under this offense and then challenge it from that perspective of being unconstitutional with that. Now, the rationale in Kennedy was that not enough states were doing this, so it became cruel and unusual punishment. However, there is a push now to change that narrative. There are states that are trying to do it, so it's not going to be unusual because others try to do it. As General Marshall indicated, once one person is charged with it, other states can come on board and file briefs as part of it in support of this offense, and it would be taken up through there. The decision in Kennedy was 5-4, and that was a 2008 Supreme Court, so it's not like it was a unanimous opposed to it. The rationale and the dicta that they used did indicate the rationale of other states' involvement, so I think that's absolutely pertinent to what we're trying to do.
Depending on how quickly this legislation will be passed, is there any potential for the suspects in this Bibb County case to face punishment?
Unfortunately, no. We're not able to retroactively apply this punishment to those. It has to be in effect at the time the offense was committed. I wish we could, but unfortunately we can't. So we'll not be able to get the Bibb County individuals, but hopefully the next person that does this, the next person that's caught, will be subject to this law.
I know it's, excuse me, go ahead.
Are you concerned that by applying the death penalty to child, pedophiles and rapists, that may encourage the perpetrators of this kind of thing to kill the victim as he's still facing the death? Would be going from by raising the stakes, maybe not having the death penalty for that keeps them from killing the child.
No, I'm not. The reason why I'm not is because I've prosecuted these cases. I've prosecuted cases where children were under the age of 6 at the time when they were raped and sodomized. Most of the time it's by someone that the victim knows, and that person continuously commits that offense repeatedly, multiple times over a length of period of time. They don't just stop. So they would keep that victim present, so they would continue to use that victim in this manner. They're not going to kill that victim. I don't believe that. I don't have that concern. I think this is an opportunity. What I do think is there may be people that reconsider and say, I don't want to get the death penalty as part of this, so that I'm not going to pursue this avenue.
Representative, what hurdles did you face in this previous session that you don't expect to face in the next one?
I have an ace in the hole, and that ace up my sleeve is Senator April Weaver. She is a incredibly effective legislator. She is passionate. She is a fighter. I've had the chance to work side by side with her in the House. I've had the chance to work side by side and help legislation since she's become a senator. I can't tell you how happy I was to get that call from Senator Weaver, who said, this cannot stand anymore. What do we need to do? And I am so happy that we can work together. And she is absolutely essential. She's the difference between last year and this year.
No pressure. No pressure.
And just a follow-up, I'd love to hear from you as well as anybody else. But some of the criticism about laws like this is that it forces the victims to relive these horrific events. How do you respond to that?
Can you explain that a little bit more about how you believe it causes somebody to relive it?
To not relive it, but to remember these events over and over again in their memory.
Yeah, you've tried these cases too. If that's a concern, then why don't we talk about what we do to parole victims when their families come to a parole hearing to have to relive the crime in their own minds and worry about when somebody's going away. I believe kids are strong, that this is ultimately about accountability, and whether this is a death penalty case or a death eligible is really the better way to be able to say it, or not. We're asking kids to come into courtrooms and share with total strangers the events that took place. And I appreciate the question because that's a concern all the time. And it's why, and I should have said this earlier, and Sheriff can speak to this, remarkable child advocacy center sitting in Bibb County right now that is having immense work to be able to do to help restore and to bring kids back to some level of normalcy that have gone through this. But sadly, it's what we have to do in a criminal justice system is ask those who become the victims of crimes to be able to tell their story. And you can imagine for adult rape victims, it's difficult enough. But when we ask children to come into the setting of a courtroom and have to share those experiences, it's even more significant. And so I don't think that anybody on this diocese takes that lightly, but we're not creating additional stress for victims because it's a death-eligible case. Those that offend children have created that problem, and the criminal justice system becomes the only vehicle for which we can provide them with relief. And I'll tell you just a story from my own career, representing a young girl who was sexually abused by her father on countless occasions, to the point that the initial counselors working with her had to help her want to take a shower because her father used to pull back the shower curtain, and it caused her not to want to be able to bathe. I mean, that's just an example of the significance that she faced. She was able to get remarkable help from a child advocacy center, and we'll never forget getting a graduation invitation from her to come to her graduation, to be a part of her family there. And she looked at the child advocacy counselor that she also sent that invitation to and said, because of what y'all allow me to do, I get a chance to tell other little girls just like me that everything's going to be okay. There's value and accountability for that victim. The criminal justice system becomes the vehicle for that to take place.
So it sounds like it's sort of to bring closure to the victim. What about a case where you can't get that death penalty at the end? Like how do you bring closure to those victims?
I don't think that's a question of closure. I think that becomes what is the result. And Representative Simpson, I want you to weigh in on this as well. Not every case that is under this bill will be eligible for death. There still has to be aggravating factors that Alabama has set out. And if there are no aggravating factors, and if they are not a minor when they committed the offense, then life without the possibility of parole is the punishment. And so I think the role of the prosecutor, the role of those supporting the victim and their families, because let's remember this is more than just that child victim, it's their families as well, they'll be able to explain what that process is. But I do think this idea of closure sometimes becomes a little bit overused, because as our dear friends from Vocal will tell you, the consequence of particularly violent crime, and this is a violent crime, let's be clear, is for the rest of their lives. The only hope is that that victim becomes better able to deal with that consequence and that trauma as a result of what they've endured. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, the process, it's very similar to how murder is prosecuted currently. So prosecuting the DA's office would have to decide if they want to pursue capital rape. Like there's murder and then there's capital murder. There would still be rape and then potentially capital rape. So the prosecutor would decide how to file the charges to go through. The grand jury would have to indict for capital rape. The jury would have to convict for capital rape. And then beyond that, the jury would have to go and pursue either, if they are convicted of capital rape, the jury would make the determination as to life without the possibility of parole or death. And then the judge has to go through there. So it's the same exact process as capital murder is now. Not every murder in the state of Alabama is prosecuted as a capital murder. I don't anticipate that every rape would be prosecuted as capital rape. But when you have situations like what happened in Bibb County, that would be up to the Bibb County prosecutor, but this would be a tool that they would have in their belt that they could if they decided to use that. Yes, ma'am.
We have seen cases, especially death penalty cases here in Alabama and across the country, that have just been litigated to the fullest extent before somebody actually gets the death penalty. Do you see Alabama's criminal justice system as ready to potentially handle appeal after appeal after appeal all the way potentially up to the highest court?
I think we can handle it. I think it's worth it. I think that the effort we put in to save victims, as Senator Weaver mentioned, even if it's just one, it's worth it. Even if the threat serves as a deterrent for more to stop them from doing it, if it serves as punishment for accountability, as General Marshall indicated, it's worth it. Some dollars, sometimes we spend the money, we put the effort in because it's necessary. And there's not anything more necessary than the innocence of a child.
Let me also add, as a result of the leadership of both Matt and April, we passed the Fair Justice Act. It's been now, I guess, about 6 years ago, in which we streamlined death penalty appeals. And the reason for that was because the first person we executed during my tenure as Attorney General, he committed that crime when I was a junior in high school. And I was 54 years old when the death penalty was finally imposed. And as a result of the ability of the legislature to embrace the idea that we need to provide a faster track for those appeals with, by the way, additional protections for defendants with lawyers, then we hope that that timeline is greatly truncated. But I can answer very quickly as to what our position would be on the ability to defend this, and that answer is yes, and we're prepared to do it the moment we have that opportunity.
A question for Senator Weaver. I know it's a little bit early, but what sort of support do you have right now for both of y'all's bills?
So I'm really glad that you asked that question, because while I appreciate Representative Simpson's very kind words about me, Representative Simpson and I are a team. And the difference from last year until this year is last year the bill didn't have as much steam behind it early on. It got caught up in some filibusters and some things that really got off track late in the legislative session. As I said before, I have had discussions with Senate leadership. Representative Simpson has had discussions with House leadership. The amount of support that I have received from my Republican colleagues has been amazing. And as a matter of fact, one of the reasons that we are not filing the bill today is because we want to give our colleagues the opportunity to co-sponsor this bill. And we've just had a lot of support. I can tell you from the conversations that we've both had, we believe that this bill will move quickly, will move fast, and that we'll be moving in both chambers at the beginning of the legislative session early.
Is this going to be the same bill as last year? Are there any changes?
We're looking at that. I anticipate it being very, very similar to what the final version was last year. So the bill that I initially filed was death penalty for children if the victim was under the age of 6. There was a Democrat amendment from Representative Adeline Clark that moved it up to the age of 12. We're going to look at what the other states are doing to make sure Alabama is still in line with where the other states are. We're going to work with the General Marshal's office to make sure that they're the ones that have to defend it. So we want to make sure we've got it as tight, as streamlined as we possibly can to make sure we're in line with everything else. When we initially filed it last year, there was only 2 states that had done it. That was Florida and Tennessee. Well, now you have 3 additional states. So we're going to make sure everything's in line. And essentially, if you start with the bill from where it was when it passed the House last year, I think you're probably 99% of the way there.
All right, guys, one more. Brian, I have a question for Mr. Marshall. Based on your career so far, and using Bibb County as an example, is this the worst case of a child abuse that you've heard about or will be dealing with in terms of the number of the victims and the number of suspects?
Short answer is yes. It's why I have so much respect for how Sheriff Wade has handled this already. Small office who's given every bit of resources and manpower to resolving this issue. But I've seen a lot in 25 plus years as a prosecutor, the scope and the depth and the depravity of what has been described. And I think we're still going to learn more when we have an opportunity to be able to allow the facts to be tried. They are the worst that I've ever seen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir.